Welcome to Ideas in Action, Conversations That Matter, where bold voices meet big ideas and powerful conversations inspire practical change. I'm your host, Kemi Ayanda, and each week we sit with thinkers, doers, and disruptors to unpack what's broken, reimagine what's possible, and co-create the future we all deserve. Today, we are honored to have Mr. Michael Wafula with us again, this time to explore the critical topic, civic duty or civic luxury, changing the mindset. In a world where governance and institutions are constantly tested, how do we shift the narrative and build a culture where civic duty is not just a privilege, but a responsibility for all? So, why does this topic matter? Civic engagement is often seen as a luxury, something for the few who have the time, resources, or platform. However, active participation in democracy should be a right and a duty for all, regardless of background or circumstances. When people see civic duty as a luxury, they disengage from the systems that impact their lives, leaving governance to a select few. This conversation challenges us to reconsider the value of civic participation and explore how we can make it a shared responsibility grounded in the principle that everyone, regardless of their status, has a role to play in shaping their society. Before we get started, let's get to know today's guest a little bit. Michael Wafula is a passionate Kenyan leader and entrepreneur with over 14 years of experience in church ministry and more than a decade in the nonprofit sector. He has served in various leadership, mentorship, and program development roles, reflecting a deep commitment in transformational leadership, community impact, and values-driven service. Michael currently runs two startups, Springboard, a general supplies and e-commerce company with cross-border ambitions, and Shuela, an edtech brand offering digital learning solutions for schools and teachers. His ventures are grounded in innovation, social impact, and a strong desire to empower underserved communities through education, technology, and enterprise. He holds a postgraduate diploma in strategic management and combines his academic training with hands-on leadership experience to drive growth and resilience in both nonprofit and business environments. He is a firm believer in purpose-driven living. Michael is also an emerging author, using his life stories to inspire transformation, healing, and faith in others. Michael lives in Nairobi with his three beloved sons, Nathan, Jonathan, and Ethan, who inspire his daily commitment to building a legacy of excellence, faith, and intentional fatherhood. Mr. Wafula, welcome back to Ideas in Action.
Thank you, Kemi. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate, again, this opportunity to be part of this conversation.
By the way, my second son is called Jotham, by the way.
Oh, really? Awesome.
Fantastic. So let's get to today's conversation. I think this will be an exciting one.
Sure.
So, how do we shift the perception of civic duty from one that is seen as a luxury to an essential responsibility for all citizens?
We need to understand one thing, that if there is suffering, if there is suffering in the country, all of us will suffer. If there is prosperity in the country, then all of us will prosper. As in, what we are doing is to understand that anything that is being done is actually done for us. If we don't choose to be part of it, well and good, but it's going to affect us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So how do we shift that perception? How do we get people to realize that this is not a luxury? This is something that is essential, my responsibility, my duty. It's just like I eat or I sleep and I wake up. How can we make that shift?
Education. We need to educate the people. We need to empower the people. Our people are not really empowered. We need to really empower them, educate them, and show them that this is your duty. How do we do that? That is now the biggest challenge of all. How do you do that? We need to find channels and systems to educate the people, to show them that this is what they're supposed to do. And also to bring to their realization that if they don't do it, then someone else is going to do it for them. And that somebody may not have their interests at heart. And so what I mean is this, that, people need to understand that, for instance, how the government is led. Right now we are complaining about the presidents, we are complaining about war in Africa, we are complaining about this and that, we are complaining about a lot of things. But actually we should be pointing at ourselves and saying, what did I not do? And so we need to provide education from the grassroots.
One of the things I realize with Africans is that we're so resilient. If we make up our minds about something, we get it done somehow, regardless of the challenges we face. When it comes to capacity and education and all that, if we really want to be educated about something, we really don't tend to wait for government. I mean, people go on social media these days, people find ways to get this education. How does this play into shifting perception and shifting responsibility and getting this capacity that you're mentioning?
Okay, in Kenya, we had the Gen Z who really rose up and they used the social media. So one thing that I know is that over 60, let's say 80% of the Kenyans have a phone. We can do the SMSs, we can do the WhatsApp messages. So if we decide to do something, we'll do it. But now the question is, have we decided? Have we decided? There gets to a point where we have to really say enough is enough. And so I think we've not gotten there. Even in Kenya, we are not yet there. We have not said enough is enough. And if we have said enough is enough, there is someone coming in between and interfering with our voice, because there's someone with their own interests coming to slap in between, come and cut in between and bring their own interests right there.
So what role do you feel that community leaders, particularly in Africa, given our cultural system, our traditional system, what role do you see that they play in using their influence to foster a culture of civic responsibility?
Their role is so big. Their role is so big in terms of, many people believe in these systems. First of all, their voice is trusted by many people. For instance, a church. When you go to the church, and the church tells you this, you can almost trust that, rather than when you go somewhere else and someone tells you so. The church needs to use its trust for better reasons. Even the mosques, even the chief barazas, even these small groups in the community, even this small leadership, people elected you because they trust you, because you have a voice that people can look to. And so we need to use those systems, those voices of trust, to challenge and change the system and bring education to the system. Yeah.
So when it comes to politics and elections, I see that a lot of politicians tend to cut, community leaders. They go to church. You see some people just appear in churches or mosques, or even like in specific, very strong communities. And sometimes we find that some community leaders are actually, in quotes, bought over. What's your view on this, and how can we change that narrative such that our community leaders use their influence positively for the good of their communities?
One of the things that I've learned in this life is to define your value, define your cost, define the things that you can trade and the things that you cannot trade. Define your minimum value and say, I can do this, I cannot do this. So you see, sometimes we have defined our value so cheap, we are so cheap that someone comes and gives us a car and then we sell our community. And that is what is going to happen. It has happened in Kenya so many times. And unfortunately, let me just give you an example of my country today. My country today, the church is so quiet. The church is not speaking. There is no influence. There is the Evangelical Alliance. They're not speaking. It's like you don't hear their voices. In 2007, after the post-election violence, up to 2013, I could feel the weight of the voice of the church. The church was very vocal. The church was very deliberate. The church was ready actually to advocate for some of these things. But what has happened? So from 2022 up to now, the church has been so quiet, except for the bishops of the Catholic Church. They've been speaking. So one thing that I'm trying to say is I've seen many people bought, and they're not bought with a lot of money. Very few coins, they're bought cheaply, and it shouldn't be. So again, it's very hard to say what needs to be done. But I think what needs to happen is it's a personal conviction. What do I believe in? What is my belief system? What are my values? What do I want out of all this? Sometimes it's not bad to say no. You cannot say yes to everything that looks like gold. Some things are not gold. Some things are going to buy you. Some things are going to waste your society. And so it's actually, Kemi, it's not very easy to say what needs to be done because it happens. I've seen it happen. You think things are going to change. They don't change. You think this person will not be bought. They are bought. You look at somebody that you really value, somebody that you thought that they would actually be a voice that you'll always like and admire and see. All of a sudden, they are bought, they are quiet, they're not saying anything. So this thing happened. It is human. But, we need to understand that whatever we are doing has consequences. That is now maybe what I'll just appeal to the heart of the people. Whatever we do has consequences. If I accept to be bought, there are consequences. I was a pastor for 14 years. And I know the pressure of the politicians wanting to come to your church some few Sundays before the elections, They know your church is so big, it has they just want to come and say hi to the church. And then if you say no to them coming, they have like 50 members in the church who are in their faction. Now you start fighting with them. So it's just like a trickling down effect, So the pastors are under pressure, the bishops are under pressure, the community leaders are under pressure, You say this, you say no to them, you lose this. I know of a pastor who lost his position just because he said no. He said no to a pastor coming, he said no to a politician coming to his church to speak, and he lost his position. And this thing has happened everywhere. Some politicians, what they do is that they get good connections. They go to the bishop up there. They buy the bishop. So you down there at the local level, you cannot say no. So what is going to happen is this personal conviction. And that is what I really insist. And ultimately, what I've actually been talking about is just capacity building, having education, and also, the other thing that is also buying us so much is poverty. If we learn to help the people to understand the value of working hard, the value of making their own money, the value of not being lazy, the value of just knowing that, I can make this money. If this person is going to buy me with 100,000 shillings, Kenya shillings, and yet I can work hard and make this money within a week, what is important? Should I wait for this money or work hard? So those are the things that we really need to start thinking about and changing the paradigm.
You bring up a very, very valid point about values. And I remember, like Africa, one of the things that growing up, we were taught is about the values as an African or as a Nigerian or a Kenyan. In terms of, in fact, you have things that were not allowed. You couldn't even, if you had like a young person space, spending money lavishly, the communities will ask questions. You will find people that are not even your relatives. You would be accountable. They will hold you to account. But that's not the case anymore. And it looks like this whole issue of the value and the value, our relegation of value and our value system is actually now affecting our entire polity and economy and politics, as the case may be. What's your view on this in terms of getting back to those fundamentals in the society when it comes to our value system?
One of the things that our colonialists also did that was not so good was to come and destroy our value system. Our culture, our culture was not bad. It was so good. For instance, I was not supposed to hug my mother-in-law. You're not supposed to stay close to your mother-in-law. And there was a reason why, those were things that were not accepted in the community, in some communities, and there was, like what you said, in Nigeria, there was this, there was that. And so there is an erosion of values. Now, people think They can make their own decisions, decide, and do whatever they want to do. Now, one thing that can be done is this. When I was growing up, I used to remember we used to go and visit our grandmother. Our education used to happen around the fire. Our grandmother is cooking and she's giving us stories. She's telling us stories, and then we'd be scared in the night because things maybe would come, giants would come and kill us. So we'd sleep and cover ourselves and say, we don't want to go out because giants can eat us and kill us. In the real sense, she was just teaching us we have to be responsible. Don't walk out in the night. And so now people have said, now we are educated. The white man has brought this to us. The Western, the Eastern man has brought this to us. And so we need to change our values because we are modernized. Modernization does not mean that our values has to be eroded. Now, one of the things that we need to do is now go back to where the rain started beating us. Now, what happened? Now, we thought that our mothers, our fathers are not so important. Let us look to these other people who maybe will add value to us. Now these people come with different values, different systems, and some are very immoral, and we buy them because we think they are our role models, they are stars, they shine out there, and our mother and our father doesn't shine. So what needs to be done is this. We need to have mentoring systems within our own. Where are our mothers to mentor our girls? Where are our fathers to mentor our boys? Where are these businessmen who are reputable, who have integrity, who can mentor these young businessmen? So it just comes back to coaching and mentoring and being fathers and being mothers to the society. And so that is what we need to do. Yeah.
That's really profound. Thanks for sharing those. As we begin to wrap up on this episode, and we go back to the topic of civic duty. It happens that oftentimes citizens feel like, okay, every 4 years I just need to cast my vote. For those that even have their voters card and cast their votes, that participate. Others don't, they just sort of absolve themselves from the entire process. But civic engagement and civic duty is not only during elections. It needs to go beyond that. What's your take on this in terms of how do we embed civic duty in our daily lives and not wait until another round of election period?
One thing, okay, we need to start with how we elect, but also before even the elections, like in Kenya now, we've been doing the IEBC, the electoral body. It has been set up right now to now govern the elections. Now, the politicians know very well that they have to be represented in this body. So they really campaign for people with their own interest to come in this electoral body. So, but what has the citizens been doing? They think that's not important. So we sit aside. We don't even think about it. And you see, sometimes if we don't speak about it, even in the electoral body, there'll not be any representation. So like now in Kenya, what happened that was so good this year, I even saw the church was able to get someone in the election panel of the electoral body, the panel that was electing the committee of the elections. It was represented well, like there was the church, there was there was different groups into that. So we need also to understand that. We also need to understand that we need to do education. The government does not have the capacity to do civic education, but you have a friend that you can speak to about education in terms of what needs to be done, in terms of elections. And also we need to realize that casting the vote is just a small event, but after the event, now comes the process. Now comes the life that you have to live. Now comes the struggle that we have to bear. Now comes the challenges that we have to fight, Now, how do I fight through the 4 years? How do I fight? Like in Kenya, we have to fight for the next 5 years. You elect today, you have to struggle, fight, complain, mama, bicker, whatever it is for the next 5 years. So we need also to understand that we have also these 5 years to change the things. We have the 5 years to speak to our friends, to speak to our family members, and also We need to encourage young emerging leaders, encourage them and tell them to vie for positions of leadership. We need to do that. If you see someone has some good potential, encourage them. And if you have the money, support them to go and vie. Now, another thing that many voters miss, when it comes to the time of going to the elections, you find like people don't even have the voters card. Do you have the voters card? That's the other thing. So you find that over 50% of the population that can vote doesn't have the voters card. And then during the elections, again, there is a voter apathy. You only find like out of the 50% that had the voters card, only 20% go to vote. It shouldn't be. So we need to really understand that our part is to play all these politics all the way. And also one other thing that we also miss out is this, being part of a political party. And let me say why. When you're part of any political party, it means that you're going to make the decision down there, because elections start from the political party level. There are maybe 5 people there. Now elect one out of them, then it goes up and up and up. So you need to belong to a party to make the decision also of the elections from down there. So have a voter's card, belong to a political party, participate in the process, go for education meetings, speak to someone about it, and finally go and do the elections on the right day.
And that's a very good place to draw the curtains on today's episode. It's a wrap. Thank you, Mr. Wafula, for your incredible insights today. And thank you, viewers, for joining us on Ideas in Action, Conversations That Matter. We have explored powerful ideas on transforming civic duty into a shared responsibility. And now the real work begins. As we continue to challenge traditional structures, let's keep pushing for a culture of active participation and engaged citizenship. Here's the challenge. How can you contribute to making civic duty a fundamental part of everyday life in your own community? Whether through innovation, advocacy, or action, let's work together to create governance systems that are inclusive, accountable, and people-centered. Remember, change begins with a conversation, but it is sustained through action. Let's keep imagining, let's keep building, and let's keep daring together. Until next time, keep moving ideas into action.